When you first get on the boat, you'll find this folder that has all sorts of information about the boat that we're going to go through in this video. This document is on the website along with a number of other manuals and information about the engine as well as the boat. So we're going to come over and start prepping. So here you get a good view of the engine, and the first thing we're going to do is come down. There's been a slight rearrangement, but Thru-Hull has the key on it. We're going to first check the strainer, and it looks reasonably clear. Open the Thru-Hull for the water, and then we're going to take a look at the fuel separator, and it's nice and pink, and I don't see anything in it. So those are two items that you need to check first off. If we look in here, so the raw water is coming up from this hose, and this is the raw water impeller. If you ever needed to change that, it's really convenient on this boat. You've just got 6 hex screws that you can either use a wrench or a screwdriver to take this plate off, and then you can change that impeller. We also have good access to the belt, and we only have a single belt on this. One would change that by loosening the bolt on the alternator, and it'd be easy to change and then reset that. We're now going to come over here and look at a couple items. The dipstick is right here. We're going to pull that out and check the oil in just a minute. But we also have another one that some people might think is a dipstick, but this is actually a pump that can be used to pump the oil out of the engine. So this is more of a boat chief or assistant boat chief action at workday when they change the oil. So we're going to go ahead and check the dipstick right now. So I'm going to first pull it out, and we're going to look at it. And the line is right there. It's reading right at the line, but I'm going to go ahead and clean it anyway. And now I'm going to use the light here. You can see that it sometimes will read high, a little higher, and you can see the line there. This is because some of the oil will run from the tube on the dipstick. So if it looks like it's really high, just check it again. If you still think it's really high, don't take the boat out, because you don't want to run the engine with it overfilled. Oil is added right here, pretty conventional. Coolant, this is access to the coolant reservoir, but it's the same. It has not changed. Same coolant reservoir under the sink, and so that's in the same location. Let's see. As we look in here, we have a brand new Aqualift, and it's larger, but in roughly the same position. And with the drain also in the same position in the back, and you access that through the back panel. We have right down here, got a couple ground wires somewhat in the way, but this is the drain for the Aqualift, and it's right next to the sink drain Thru-Hull. Okay, another unique feature on this Beta 20 engine is there are valves on the input and output of the coolant lines going to the water heater. So if you were to have a leak in the water heater or any of those hoses, you could close it off. If you close it off, of course, you're not going to get any hot water. The fuel line is this black line that comes in from the tank and goes into the Racor, which is a filter and separator. We look at the bottom of the separator to see nice pink fuel and nothing else, no water, which would show up typically as a milky substance, which would then need to be removed. The fuel line then is a gray hose that goes across the bottom of the engine and comes up to the lift pump, which is a mechanical lift pump, which is different from the old engines, which were electric lift pumps, and that can be seen here. There's actually a hand primer that can be used to, if you needed to prime the engine. Typically you don't. An alternative way to prime the fuel line is on the top of the Racor. You unscrew this, and then you can prime the fuel system with that pump. That works quite well. It actually is easier than using the primer on the mechanical pump. That fuel line then goes up to a fuel filter, which is the high point in the system, and so it can be bled through this nut. If you were priming, you would loosen this nut and make sure that all the bubbles come out of the fuel line. That then goes down to the high pressure pump, which then is in metal lines going to the injectors. One thing unique to this engine, as we'll see from the panel, is that it has an electronic solenoid to stop, which is located right here. But you can also, if that were to fail, you can just manually push this lever which says stop, and it will stop the engine. It cuts off the fuel. The button is really convenient, and we'll see that when we get up to the engine panel. Here we are looking at the transmission and the transmission linkage, which is set up differently. Comes in from the vertical and connects to the linkage. The dipstick for the transmission is off to the starboard side of the transmission, and shouldn't need to check that unless maybe you're out cruising. That's something that gets routinely checked by the boat chief, assistant boat chief. Another unique feature of the Beta 20 is that rather than having a breaker for over the engine, there are two fuses. The fuse you're looking at here is for the starter motor solenoid, and it's a 40 amp blade fuse, so we haven't used those too much. I'll show you one in just a minute where they're kept. The other fuse you need to know about is one that feeds the engine panel. It's also a 40 amp blade fuse, and it's tucked back in at the back of the engine. Can be seen and accessed from the back. So those are unique, and now I will show you where you can get those, and that is this is our spare parts. And so we have a packet of 40 amp blade fuses. Also in here is the impeller and a belt, as well as some of the air filters, fuel filters, and oil filters. So this is our maintenance packet for the new Beta 20. We have a AC side and a DC side. So on the AC side, there is actually a 30 amp breaker here. There's also one in the back of the boat in the aft starboard lazarette. We'll look at that a little bit later. We have 3 buttons here. 2 that are on or in are the outlets and battery charger. The third one is the water heater, and it is in the off position. We don't need to heat water when we're sitting at the dock. If you did want to, all you do is push it in, it clicks and stays in. That would turn on the water heater, and push in hard and pop out, and it's off. And that's the way you want to leave it when you leave the boat, because not only would it just run the water heater all day and all night, it would run up our electrical bill as well. So on the right hand side of this panel, we have all of the DC switches, which are pretty self-explanatory, and then we have the Perco, which is currently off, but you can put to number 2 for cranking. You can put it to number 1 for house, or you can put it to both. So if you're starting the engine, you would want to put it on cranking, drawing lots of current. Once you're sailing or possibly at anchor, you would put it on the house batteries to save the engine battery. If you are motoring, you could put it on both, because then it would charge both batteries. So on Mark III, the house batteries are actually under starboard berth, and we have 2 batteries that are connected in parallel, which is different from Sorella, which has 2, battery 1 and battery 2 in the same compartment. So we'll now look at where the engine battery is, and that is back under the berth, and we'll see if we can get this up. So you can see the battery. We also have the fuel tank, which does have a shutoff valve if you ever needed to shut off the fuel tank. The water heater we just talked about, and then over on the left side back here, we have the water pump for the pressurized water system. So lots of stuff back here. So that is the cranking battery. And so that's the basics of the electrical panel. One thing that's important, if you have the engine running, you never turn the Perco to the off position. You can switch between 1, both, and 2, but if you were to turn it off with the engine running, it would provide an open circuit and damage the alternator. It basically blows out the diodes, and you no longer can charge the battery with the engine. We're now looking at the control panel and are going to look at the fuel gauge. The fuel gauge will come on when the key is turned to run. So the engine is not started yet, but you can see that it is now reading basically full. And if I turn that key off, it'll go back down. So fuel gauge had to be put here because there wasn't room in the new panel from the Beta 20 manufacturer. Here we are at the panel. This is a totally unique panel. It has a tachometer, we have oil pressure gauge and warning light. We have a voltage and voltage warning light, and then temperature. We also have a warning light for raw water flow. that's been added to this, as well as a blower button. This can be turned on even before the key's inserted. It goes directly to the Perco. Okay, so just to show you, with the key in the run position, we have the, if we look over here, we can now read the engine hours at 20.1. That's a digital readout on the tachometer. We see that we've got a variety of our lights going off, and so another unique feature is for the glow plugs, we turn it to the left for heat for 5 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we go to start. And all the red lights have gone off, and we have a green light. We have oil pressure. We're running about 1500 RPMs, and alternators working, and so the engine is running normally. One thing with this engine is if you crank for more than 10 seconds, it's recommended to stop because the starter motor can overheat. I'd recommend waiting for it to cool down, maybe 5 minutes, but it's also a good time then during that 5 minutes to drain the aqua lift before starting again. With this new engine, it has been starting immediately, so hopefully it'll do that for a number of years. Okay, so as mentioned when we were down below, this button on the lower left that has stop written next to it is the shutoff button. Will no longer have a lever to pull. So I'm going to go ahead and go to idle. Idle's about 800 RPM, and then all you do is push the button and it shuts it off. Okay, so we are looking at the large lazarette, and here, actually right here, is the refrigerator compressor. So if you were to turn that on, you'll hear a hum. We also have a variety of chemicals stored. Interestingly, Mark III has 2 different types of flopper stoppers, and that's when you're out at anchor and your boat is bouncing around. You can put out this flat panel that opens in one direction, closes in the other, and acts like a diode in a sense. It allows water to go through one way but not the other, and so it'll damp out any oscillations. And then there's a what they call a rocker stopper. It's same basic function. You just hang it off the boat. It has a bunch of these, and will keep the boat from rocking. Okay. We also have a manual bilge pump, the handle which, oh, here's the handle. Just plugs in. And you can pump out the bilge manually if your bilge pump were to have failed. Okay, so this is the lazarette, and this is the aft starboard lazarette, and you can see the stern anchor chain and rode, but also, and somebody has added a nice little protector feature. This is a 30 ampere. That is for the shore power coming in. So if you put on shore power and it didn't come on in the boat, you can always check that. Okay, so here is our propane locker, and propane can be quite hazardous because it will sink to the bottom of the boat rather than floating away, so to speak. So we have a locker that vents outside the boat. We have not only the valve, but an electric valve, so that you have to turn on an electric valve on the DC console to be able to get propane to the stove. Now, one thing that's important to understand is when we open the valve, we can see that the pressure gauge reads about 110. That tells you that there's pressurized propane in the tank. It does not tell you how much, because it will read that same pressure until it basically runs out. So the way we check propane is we lift the tank, and this one's actually feeling pretty low. Most of the boats have scales, and the tank lists empty weight and full weight, and so you can, by weighing it, you can tell how much propane you have. A number of people have had cold dinners because they didn't understand that the pressure valve, the pressure on the gauge here is not a reading of how much is in the tank.